This is. I gotta make this. Okay, so I close this, right?
No.
What do I do?
Just click on Zoom.
What do you mean?
Click on Zoom.
Right here?
Where's the Zoom app?
Right here?
Mm-hmm.
I love streaming.
So do I. ATV-TALK presents The Morning Show. Welcome, everybody. We need to shout out our sponsors, Elka Suspension. If you're looking for the best ride in the industry, there you go. Elka's it. We need the best tires, GBC. Check them out. They're making some great product out there for recreational and professional racing, recreational racing. Whatever you're doing, GBC's the tire for you. Hey, UTVs, trucks. There's a whole line of stuff. You go to their website, check it out. DBR makes some great products for your YFCR as far as air intakes, ECU holders for the Vortex, and battery boxes. So you can check them out. They make some other products. You can go to their website and check those guys out as well. We're supposed to have Jacob Stevens. He has not linked in, so he might have had a rough gaming night last night, but we'll maybe he'll pop in later. Danny Duncan is on vacation with his family, so he's out. And Joe Tolle has stepped in like the man he always is to help out and make this happen. And this is ATV Only's part 2. Joe, we were having a discussion when we ended last show about the greatest of all time. And we never got to present arguments and talk about the deep segment of the show and get into what that means, being the GOAT. And I would like to have that discussion. I'm biased, and I openly admit I'm biased, and I'm not going to shy away from it. So if there's negative connotations to it, I apologize, but it's how I feel and how I see it. And I'm not degrading anyone else in that at all. I think there's some amazing riders in this industry that may not even get recognition for what they've done in their portion of the ATV world. So what are you thinking, Joe?
I don't actually think that you picked Eichner. People who weren't here last week, I kind of picked Denton because just number of GNC championships, which combined motocross and TT years ago. Probably half the people watching don't even remember that. But at one point, TT and motocross were all part of the same series, and you had to excel at both if you wanted to win the overall championship. You couldn't just be a motocross racer. You couldn't just be a slider. You had to be able to do a little bit more of it all. But so Denton was my pick. You chose Eichner, which you say is biased, but looking at it objectively as a not a biased person, I have no affiliation with either one. I'd say that realistically, he has to make the short list. As if not. He's definitely one of the best because he raced so many different kinds of racing. I don't even know if we touched on the three-wheeler guys last week. Dean Sundahl, one of the first pro three-wheeler racers at the time when Honda came out with a production-based machine in '81 with the ATC. I know he raced short course. I know he raced Baja through the years. I don't know if he raced them on three-wheelers or not. So. Dean is maybe another guy who should be on that list.
I totally agree with that. Because Sundahl did also a very wide range of three-wheeler racing, and he got into the four-wheelers. But if we just talk about his three-wheeler career alone, it was a motocross TT. He came from the 90s, the rigid machine. And came into the suspended ATC 250R in '81. He also rode some conversion stuff back before Honda, with the 250 ATC when it came out. He got to race in Australia and other places in the world in endurance style races or long distance, however you want to categorize it. Baja, he was a king there. He did really well. I don't know if he won as many races as some of the guys like specialists like Wayne Matlock, who dominated down there. Caffro dominated down there. So you have to look at those guys in their world, but Dean is definitely on the short list as well. If we're talking about ATVs and you consider ATV, ATC, I consider it one category solely because we're all-terrain vehicles. Doesn't say all-terrain. It just doesn't limit it to 3 and 4 wheelers, or it limits it to 3 and 4 wheelers. It doesn't exclude 3 wheelers, in my opinion. So that's.
Oh, I think, yeah, you have to include both. I mean, it was just the evolution of the machine. 3 wheelers where they took it first, and obviously then it progressed and got better. But I think if you look at it, you have to look at all of it kind of included. And something we talked about through the week off the air that I think I wanted to bring back up that you mentioned was, when we say, Gary Denton may be the greatest of all time because championships and what he did, or we say Eichner could be greatest of all time because of championships, Rendezvous, all the different kind of racing that he did, or even Dean Sundahl. We're not, like you said, we're not comparing these legends and their accomplishments to the guys of today. Because I mean, honestly, if you took Gary Denton in his prime, put him on a modern 4-stroke, you all of a sudden could beam him to the future where we are today when he was at the top of his game. Give him 6 months to ride a 4-stroke. Could he go as fast as Wienen? Could he go as fast as Hetrick? Could he go? He wasn't a woods guy. Could he beat Neal or Fowler? It's like, especially on the motocross track, because he's such a specialist. I'm sorry, Fowler and Hetrick. Those guys are motocross specialists. Could Denton beat them? I'm gonna speculate and say no. Because as time passes and the sport progresses, the riding gets better, the technique gets better. Just look at motocross, 2-wheel motocross over the past 20 years and how it evolved, with James Stewart bringing in what he brings in. So I think maybe the modern guys are a little faster, but to accomplish what they accomplished in their time, it's like, how can you ever beat guys like Denton and Eichner when they're just racing so many disciplines? So not saying the old guys were faster. We're just saying for their time.
So why do we got to go forward? Why don't we go backwards? Let's take these guys back in the archaic days when they rode 250Rs and see, can they go as fast as these guys did on machines? Like Doug Gust rode a machine for quite a while with stock AR and stock shocks. I believe he won his first national with stock tires. So, let's go backwards and see if they can adapt to our world. And back when it was 250Rs and the technology was a lot different, the machines may not have worked as good. To do those big jumps, you didn't have the same suspension mods that they have today. Granted, there's so many people that I can throw into this hat, but Doug Roll and Wayne Meridian and Mike Halleck, these guys did some amazing work. Mark Lager with the 250Rs and how they evolved in the suspension era. And this era goes back before that, because when Gary Denton started winning nationals, we didn't have some of these shock guys. They weren't making cool stuff for him. I mean, Olean's made a shock for the stock A arms, but it was good, but it wasn't like today's stuff, Oh,
no, I mean, people are spoiled today. I love looking at pictures of old stuff. John Pellin was showing me a lot of pictures on his laptop one time, just old pictures he took back in the day. And you've got guys running pro 4-stroke back in the mid 80s. Like, you'd never see this today. People are so, I mean, you got to have what you got to have to compete. But at the same time, people are spoiled because these guys today look at a YFZ 450R, and before they even got it home, from the dealership, they got the suspension loosened up. They're throwing the shocks in the garbage. And it's like, what are you doing that for? That stuff is so good and revalvable. it's not top pro stuff. You're going to go aftermarket, but these guys in the 80s were racing the pro 4-stroke class on 250Xs with stock suspension. Like, they weren't crying. It's what they had. They just rode the piss out of it. So,
Well,
yeah,
you also go back, Joe, think about it this way, and this might be a little before your time. When you rolled it out of the back of the truck, that's what you had. I mean, and the link to get the product was twice as hard. You had to go through the magazine. If you could get a magazine in your local area, you didn't have the big rigs. You didn't have a shock guy, a motor guy. You had a guy that knew some. He didn't know all. And the guys that did get that, it came later. Gary Denton was very fortunate. He had a motocross background. He was a professional motocross racer. He was on like what you would consider satellite programs where he got help from the factories, but he never got the factory ride. If he would have got the factory ride, you never would have heard of him, because he would have raced motorcycles instead of four-wheelers. So his knowledge of racing superseded everybody he raced against.
I think it'd be very interesting. That would almost be a dream match to take like, I'll go with Weenan just because the number of championships, he's so close to Denton. As far as titles, are they tied now? I mean, yeah. So I think it'd be interesting, if you could take Weenan and take him back in the day and put him on, like, all right, here's Denton on an LT 250, here's Weenan on the LT 250. Obviously Denton coming from dirt bikes, the one advantage that the dirt bike riders have over the ATV guys, hopefully I don't dig myself a hole, is Denton coming in, like what you're saying, with a dirt bike background. Dirt bikes have an advantage in depth of field, which is where I think there's just way more people doing it. You go buy your kid a 65 KX tomorrow, you could take them to the track this weekend at most tracks that are racing, and you're going to have a full gate of 65s to race against. The depth of talent that comes from the motocross world is much deeper than the ATV world, just because there's more people. Not digging anything against ATV guys. The bigger your sport, the more competitive it's going to get, the higher the level of the athletes, from training to technique. So,
on that point, hold your thought just for 1 second and think of this. So I believe the ATV industry did it to itself, because when we were just racing stock A-arms, stock shocks, and going out there with race what you had, the field was the growth in the industry was amazing. The amount of people that raced ATVs was off the charts, and it was growing, it was skyrocketing. And as we evolved into needing more and more and more, where they put A-arms and shocks and did all these modifications to the machine, now we've created an industry where you have to have a $30,000 race bike to get on the track. Okay. Motorcycle didn't do that to themselves. Think about that.
Well, that's an interesting point. Now, obviously, we're not talking at the professional level with what you're saying. You're talking at the amateur level, right? Because obviously, guys that are racing supercross bikes, those obviously work supercross bikes and outdoor national bikes with factory support in the two-wheeled industry, of course. They're so dripping in unobtainium parts that those are probably like $60,000-$70,000 bikes.
Probably more.
Right. I mean, titanium costs, price of bolt, it's pretty staggering. So I don't know. I think it's partly perception, and I think it's just kind of following the leader a little bit in the ATV stuff. We did a video probably 10 years ago on what it takes to get a YFZ 450R ready for the track. And we were like, okay, dealer, kill switch, Nerf bars, pipe, programmer, you can go race. and can you go race professionally? No. Could you go race at the local fair series locally? And if you're fast, win? Yeah, you probably could, unless you've got a bunch of pros that show up and race in your class. But I think I think the whole thing of like you have to have a $30,000 ATV to hit the track is not accurate. It just depends on what level you're at. And if you're racing at a high level where you really need a $30,000 ATV, if you're racing the equivalent in two wheels, you're spending almost as much on that dirt bike. Stephen Magis is a local racer who races two wheel, who was the first professional video I ever produced when I first got a camera. We did a resume video, and that kid was just, he was racing 85s, getting ready for Loretta Lynn's. Sorry, I know we're talking ATVs here, but even on that little dirt bike, he had suspension company doing his stuff. He had motor builder. He was building probably back then, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, $8,000, $10,000 85s. So I don't know. I think the whole thing of what you have to compete is a little bit overrated. It's too much monkey see, monkey do. Whereas like if people could just, I don't need a $30,000 four wheeler. I'm going to go buy a Yamaha, stick a couple parts on it, and I'm going to go have some fun and enter some races. I think that would definitely make the sport bigger. And just wrap up what I'm saying, I think one thing that's kind of impacted negatively the size of our sport is the fact that people look at an ATV and they're like, I got to have $25,000 to compete. It's like, no, you're not racing against Joel Hetrick. You don't need that. If you're not a national racer, you don't need that. And as the perceived cost of competing goes up, the number of people who can afford to do it goes down, or the people who want to do it just feel disenfranchised and they're like, I don't have the budget. So simpler is better on ATVs. And Evan Hartzell, who is a rider for us, he races cross country right now. And let this be an example for anyone out there who's like, oh, I just can't afford to do this. It costs too much to build a bike. Evan Hartzell won the A class locally last year. He races the Ohio Cross Country Series. He is heavier than most of the guys in his class because he works a plus full-time job. He has a pipe, a Vortex ECU, the right tires and wheels. That's it. There's no aftermarket suspension work on his bike. He has no internal motor mods. He's racing pro cross country local, and he's not even in shape to race pro right now. And this is his words, not mine. He's beating half the class every time he lines up on a stock bike. So if you think you can't go out and race on a relatively stock Yamaha at the local level, it is all on you. It is not for lack of budget. It is for lack of talent or willpower. So
it comes back to the monkey see, monkey do. I can't do it unless I have this part. It rolls over into so many other walks of life that we deal with in other industries, but we don't really want to get into that. Being an aftermarket guy, I see some of what you're saying, and I agree and disagree all at the same time. But I would love to see more of your C classes be stock, stock rules, more of your local classes with more stock restrictions to keep the cost down. Your nationals, they cut the pro stock class. Okay, I realize Yamaha's the only guy, but you know what? You can still ride a Suzuki. You can still find stock Suzukis. You could still build a stock Suzuki to go race in that. I believe a couple of guys found KTMs to ride in it. Honda's not generally in stock form a motocross bike, so you're going to be up against the wall. But if you had a stock class in the cross country, you could ride a Honda in it.
What is
No,
stock class?
Stock class is off the showroom with a couple minor changes in the machine, like adding Nerf bars, adding a kill switch. I think they could change the handlebars, and they could reflash the ECU, the stock ECU. They couldn't run an aftermarket, but they could reflash the stocker to my knowledge. And since 09 to 23, there's minor changes. I believe the way they wrote the rule with no year argument, you could run 09 cams in a 23. Who cares? It's still stock because it came stock in an 09. And if you're arguing that you can't, I think you're arguing semantics and you're just being a little bee that wants to whine about something. Talented riders are talented riders. And if you can't beat them on a stock bike in the stock class, don't cry about it.
Yeah, I hate to go back and complain and be like, I told you so, but I love telling the story. So, back in 2010, when we did our motocross shootout, I was talking to George Cortez, who ran the Media All-Stars team, a man he's a great artist. He's been great asset for the sport. Love him to death. Really glad I've gotten to meet him and hang out with him. But, we had a difference of opinion, respectfully. And I was telling him back then, like, George, dude, we got all these motocross bikes. We got 5 bikes that they're marketing as motocross bikes. We need a stock class absolutely now. And we need a pro stock class now because it will mean more than the pro title if they have a pro stock class title right now, because there's so many bikes. It's the championship that will matter the most to the manufacturers and will push innovation in the sport because they're going to want that stock class title. We've seen it in snowmobiles. They have, I believe, pro stock and snowmobile. That'd be a great question for Jeremy Launderville. But, but his attitude was the bikes won't hold up. And I'm like, respectfully, I'm calling BS, because we had all the motocross bikes that were wide. That means no Honda, no Kawasaki, but we had everybody else. And we did our shootout on a track that had 4 jumps that were over 60, 80 feet. And then we had a 110-foot triple. And Aaron Meyer jumped that triple and everything else on the track on every bike except the Can-Am, because it just felt a little underpowered, although it had the best suspension out of the box as far as eating up jump landings and bumps. But George Cortez says, I don't think the bikes are going to hold up. I'm like, we tested all of them on a track stock for a day. We didn't bend one axle. We didn't bend one wheel. We broke nothing. No, it's not true. And the Nationals just did it too late. I think they should bring it back. I might even I don't even know if they should make some concessions to let somebody who has an old Honda be like, well, you can put some standard travel A-arms on it that are longer and set the stock shocks up for it. I don't know if there's a way they could creatively work a Honda into it. Just let them put an axle and some standard travel arms on it, call it a day. Because that's about all you'd have to do to a Honda to make it competitive in the stock class. So I don't know. I think they should have the stock class, and I think the stock class for the C class would be, it's a good idea.
Why not run it all the way? Why not run it all the way through? So if you're going to create all of these classes for all of these different levels, have a stock run all the way to the top so that you can start developing guys that would race more in stock level classes to get to that pro stock class. If it's promoted correctly, you're going to get more people racing it and it's going to grow. So you have 20 or 30 guys showing up to race the pro stock class instead of 15 guys racing the pro class, the pro mod class or the pro open class, whatever you want to call it. And, run for it, because the aftermarket guys are going to keep that class alive because the aftermarket guys don't have it.
Oh, sure. And I mean, you're talking for a stock class race bike, you're talking $12,000 for a brand new bike. I haven't added it up, but it's like, what do you got to get? High-bay reflashes, your ECU, under $300. Nerf bars, $500. Kill switch, $50. Wheels and tires are for around $12,000. You got a race bike versus twice the price for a fully modded everything, all the drip. And hey, I'm a big fan of the aftermarket too. I never rode a stock bike very long, but
I don't ride stock bikes, period, because of some physical limitations I have, and it has nothing to do with the stock bike. It just has to do with the fact that the aftermarket works so much better. But you know what? We've really gotten off track of our original discussion. I think
bring it back.
I think it was great that we went there, but we started talking about the machines versus talking about the individual riders. And you know, you have to go back and take your hat off to guys like Barry Hawk and Bill Balance. They did their time in the industry. If we look at Barry Hawk, he was the only transition that I know of from ATV to motorcycle to win a title.
That's a great point.
That puts a huge feather in his cap. Because he did something that nobody else, to my knowledge, has done. And when you have the greatest of all time conversation, where are we going to put the limitations? How are we going to, divide it up? In the piece that I was looking at that brought the conversation up, Doug Gust was mentioned, Tim Farr was mentioned, and these were John Natale was mentioned. John Natale won open class titles. He won the premier class titles. He had an extra long career. Joe Bird raced for 30 years and won 2 titles and was extremely competitive for a number of years. So do we shake it down for titles? Do we shake it down for motocross? Do we shake it down for cross country? Where do we shake it down for, your favorite to come into play? And my bias is the fact that I was physically building machines and working with Doug Eichner and driving all over the world, in countryside and spending my life. My children call Doug Uncle Doug because he was around so long, and my grandchildren know him as Uncle Doug. So there is a bias there because he's not more of just a friend, but he's family. So.
Well, it becomes a lot easier if you break it down segment by segment, and you're like, who's the greatest TT racer of all time? Well, I mean, that would be a little easier. There would still be debate. There'd still be arguing, when you pick it down to individual segments and who was the best, well, it's still debatable, but it's a little easier. But when you're like just best racer to ever throw a leg over a bike, all disciplines, that's really hard to say who's best. There's really no way. There's no way to say who's the best. I think we can all narrow it down to, 5 or 6 guys that would be the guy, but there's no scientific way to ever say the GOAT.
I agree with that. And even if we did narrow it down, the fan base, they're going to love who they love, regardless what the facts tell them. And that's okay. I love looking back at the accomplishments of the Tim Farrs. Shane Hitt, this is a guy that thought outside the box, and the people he had working with him helped him. Some of the things that they did away from ATVs with TT. And if we talk about TT riders, you got Chucky Creech, Brad Riley, Greg Baker, Charlie Shepard. I mean, you have so many guys.
Shane Hitt, Keith Little, Tim Farr.
I mean, these guys were so fast, and unfortunately they're overshadowed by, you look at the TT titles or the titles that Gary won, being the overall champion. When they broke it down, there was still a motocross champion and a TT champion. And then there was an overall champion, and Gary was the overall champion. I think he only won 1 overall motocross title, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken, and somebody will correct me on that. But the TTs were where he did so well. And if you ask Gary, he didn't think he was a very good TT rider. Wayne Hinson was such a big part of his program. And let's not get off track here, but Wayne Hinson, if you think about him as an individual in the industry, the things he did for so many different people, Doug Gust, Duncan Racing, he was involved with our program and our riders, and not only with Gary Denton and so many others. I mean, it's countless how many people Wayne Hinson gave advice to and helped, grow as a rider or a team or whatever.
Well, they say, you're as good as the people that you surround yourself with. And, it's been proven through the years that the people that have been around and had assistance from Wayne Hinson have done well. So if you got Wayne on your team, you got points. You've got a leg up. That's almost another discussion for another day, because it's like, oh, well, who were some of the most influential people behind the scenes? But that's another discussion.
Oh, yeah. Because we could. I could name 30 guys. 30 guys that behind the scenes did so much, and then I'll bet you there's 60 or 80 that were influential in growing our sport, and some of them don't even get recognition because they didn't want recognition. They stood behind the scenes and did things for people that some people in the industry never even knew was happening. So that's a in-depth discussion from somebody that's been around for eons. And I've been very blessed. I was born into this industry. I didn't walk into it like most people do. I just was born into it, and here it is. And it's amazing. And I don't even know all of the things that went on, because as a young kid, I didn't pay attention to who that was or what that individual did. I was just off trying to, get my chance to ride my ATV and have a good time. So,
hey, I don't think we're ever going to figure out who the greatest was, but we've definitely had some great champions through the years, and I think we've touched on some of the best for sure. Hopefully we didn't leave anybody out, or hopefully somebody can tell us in the comments who we did leave out, so that we can.
I guarantee we left some guys out, and I apologize for that. There are so many outstanding professionals in our industry, and that have ridden. We never even mentioned not one European rider, and they've had some outstanding guys. Maybe they didn't do everything over here, but over in their world, they did some amazing stuff and won a lot of races or competed really well. Joel Bontu was one of those guys. He was a fantastic rider. He was a French guy, still in the industry. Still in the motorsports industry. I think he does a lot of watercraft stuff and some UTV stuff for Yamaha in France. But a huge name at the time, because he came over and raced. There was a company, Philip Charles Leisure, or ATV World, with Martin Fletcher and Philip, that these guys had riders throughout the year that were all very talented people. So if you want to look at that too, we could go a little off and talk more about just the fact that there was so many great people in our industry and great riders with so much talent. And at any given second, you could flip it for this guy or that guy and do just amazing stuff. So my biases aside, I just love the ATV industry and all the great people I've got to meet.
I agree. And I have no bias.
You do, but you cover them up pretty well. You and I have had some great off-air discussions, and I really enjoy those. So let's transition here and get into another rough topic. I brought it up to you in the pre. There's coming a rule change in 2024 in the AMA MX series, it's going to affect the Pro-Am class, and they are going to change the rule to make it production only.
That's what's some hopium, isn't it? I mean, that's really, when you said that, it was kind of like green ears popped up, and it's like, I know it's not what I hope it is, but whenever you hear like, why would you go toward production rules at a time when we have one production bike? It's like, are you really trying? And hey, love Yamaha. I've got two in the basement, and they get ridden. Well, they do. But it's like, you would think if they're going to go to a production rule for Pro-Am, it's like, okay, great. Who's bringing out a new bike? I don't think anyone is, but
let me ask you this to be, it's going to be a little bit off topic, but it isn't. You and I have also discussed that there are manufacturers out there that have no name recognition in the United States right at the moment that possibly could throw a 450 into the mix. And with, I think, the overwhelming amount of people needing a new machine, if the engine is partially reliable, if you can get parts, people will make product for it and race it.
Go gas.
That's a KTM.
Yeah, but they're the fun brand. They're all about having fun. And quads are more fun than dirt bikes, so it just makes sense that gas would make one.
I don't think that from everything that I'm being told through the chain that I know, which is not everybody, that KTM is not interested.
Boo.
I mean, granted, you can argue what I think of KTM all the day long, but their marketing for motorcycle industry is amazing. They're doing amazing stuff in the street market with MotoGP and other forms of racing. I don't know why they wouldn't tip their hand into it, because they could take it over. They could take it away from Yamaha with one bike with 3 different colors, and people would jump on it because it's new, and
right.
Market guys can make product pretty fast and develop it. And now your pro stock class would have 4 bikes there.
That's true. So why do you think that they're going to a production rule for the Pro-Am class?
Well, I'll give you the reason that they listed, and then I'll give you my thoughts. The reason that it was listed that I read is they want to develop the riders in the Pro-Am to transition into the pro class and be ready for that transition, instead of having riders that are riding hybrids and then it takes them 1 or 2 or 3 seasons to transition from the hybrid to the factory machine, the factory chassis, how it works, the components that you need. It is a difference. Some people adapt to machines faster, like Joel Hetrick adapted to the Yamaha really quick. Brandon Hogue bounced back and forth a little bit. Chad Wienen is the developer, so he was there in the beginning. Lots of other riders have jumped off one onto another and had no transition issues, but other people don't. They like the way the Suzuki works, or they like the way that the Walsh works with a Honda motor, and that's their forte. That's what they want to ride. So when they get off of it, the bike doesn't respond the same way. They don't trust it. So they're having some issues. The reason why they switched the rule, I think that it is impossible preparation for more. I've heard that there is a machine and a company that is coming. I don't.
We're gonna talk off air.
I don't have enough information to say any more than that.
Fair enough.
When you hear rumors through the grapevine, they're rumors until it comes to fruition. I know a lot of people that have done a lot of things behind the scenes that yeah, I feel something's coming. Do I know what brand? No, I don't. I'm a little confused at that, of why it's so secret. And the development is probably happening with riders that are not in the ATV industry. They're using motorcycle people or other riders to do it, like they've done before. The factories have done it before, or you have non-disclosure agreements, things like that. So we talked
Honda.
about we
Sorry,
talked
come
about the
on.
Can-Am with Jeremy Schell. Okay, he's testing the 252 stroke, and it came out to the market people as a 4-stroke.
Yeah, we've spanked Can-Am in private conversations in regard to that decision. Like, what were you guys thinking? And you probably would have sold way more units had it been a 2-stroke. And I think they know it. I think hindsight 2020, they get it. But yeah, it seems unlikely. Like, I don't like to criticize the promoters because I don't know much about them. But just thinking it through, and it's like, okay, does making Pro-Am a production class, does that really create a much bigger pathway to the pro class from Pro-Am? Especially when you've got guys like, the guys at 4130 Motorsports. Jaden is racing a production based bike. I'm pretty sure he could be racing a hybrid in the classes that he's in, but he chose not to. And if he goes pro in the next year or two, then it will make for a slightly easier transition, but it just doesn't seem that fruitful that you would make the Pro-Am class a production rule just for the purpose of making the transition easier for the pro class. Maybe I'm wrong and out of touch, but that seems more like the kind of move that somebody makes because they're expecting another machine. And I'm not trying to spread hopium, but that's the first thing that pops into mind. It doesn't seem like it makes a ton of sense for the riders as much as it would for helping sell a new bike.
That being said, I'll bet you that promoter or those people know more about what's coming than we do, or what we know. So they may have inside track to something that might even fuel the rumors that are going around. Look at GNCC; they're still production, and they put a year on it, so you can't even go ride a production bike that's over 10 years old. So you can't ride a Suzuki or a KTM.
In GNCC?
Yeah.
In which class? In the pro class?
Yeah, in the XC1 Pro.
So you're saying, so
after 24, you won't be able to ride a Honda.
So like McGill and McClure only have one more year left on Hondas, because I think those are the only two guys that are that I know of in the pro class that are still on a Honda. Sorry, GNCC guys, I don't get to watch it all. So sorry
I believe in the XC1 class. I believe you're correct. I don't believe there is any Suzukis out there anymore. I could be wrong, but I looked through the results and I think everybody's on a Yamaha, but those two riders in the pro class. I don't know if they would retire because of it. They could, but Adam McGill up until this weekend was having an amazing year. He had an unfortunate DNF this weekend, but McClure stepped up and did really well on his Honda, and I think he was 5th. So might even have been 4th. I don't remember all the numbers off the top of my head. So these guys, let's just announce it right now. Walker Fowler came back and raced and got 6th. I don't have any details other than that. I'm glad Walker's back. I'm glad that his injury is allowed him to come back and that he wants to come back. We need ambassadors like him that is a fan favorite that people love because they love to talk to him. He's always outreaching to people. He's a joy to be around as a human being. So having him back is excellent for the sport of cross-country racing. So That's pretty cool. So everybody give a big shout out to Walker Fowler and welcome him back if you can. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to see him back. There's been a lot of discussion amongst the people who aren't in the know. It's like, is he coming back? When is he coming back? How's he going to perform? So, it's good. I remember when I met Walker, I want to say it was the 2009. No, it wasn't 2009. It was an update year for the YFZ 450R. Yamaha did a press event, and Walker was there. He was the young guy on the team at the time. Very nice, very, very humble, and the most personable guy on the team at the time. No offense to the motocross guys, but yeah, he was a sweetheart. He's a nice guy. It's good to see him back, and hopefully he can get on the top of the podium some more. I spent most of my day yesterday, I'm a little embarrassed to admit, mountain biking and doing a little catching up on some gym work. Who won yesterday?
Bryson. Neil.
Unexpected. What was
I don't know if it was a big lead or not. I know that the finishing order was all mixed up from second, third, Galata Jr. Gosh, I don't remember the exact order. I know that Cole and Hunter was seventh, and he apologized to his fans and his sponsor for whatever reason. Seventh, in a race that it looked very difficult, very challenging with mud and water and other things like that. So. It's a crapshoot out there. I don't know if Bryson got out front and dictated the pace. I just don't know enough at this point. I haven't been able to do anything. I was at an off-road expo promoting safety and which we're going to get into here in just a second, of all the different things that we need to talk to the recreational world about. But I didn't get any contacts. You normally get messages when we're going to do a show from me on Saturday, and I gave nobody anything because I was at that show. We left super early in the morning and came home. I was cleaning up and putting things away. It was 10 o'clock at night, so it was a long day for us.
Yeah, I plan on going back today and spending some time and catching up on what happened at Snowshoe. It's one of the cooler events of the year. It really looks like, at least from the spectator perspective, running through the streets a little bit at the start and all that. It looks like from a spectator perspective, like maybe one of the best events of the season. I'd love to hear what the riders have to say as to which one they like the best or which one they think is the most difficult. It'd be interesting to know.
The video I saw, man, I was like, dude, I don't even want to be there. I'm not going there.
Sounds Blackwater-ish.
Melee, I know in the XC1 class, they were dealing with moisture and machines everywhere. And it was some tough conditions. And I always take my hats off to these guys that ride in these things, that in this muck, and they just perform so well. Super talented, and they know what they're doing in their world, and they should keep doing it. So hats off to the GNCC guys. I wanted to transition and shift gears here on you. We went to an off-road expo, and it was promoted by this San Diego Off-Road Coalition. And one of the big consensus that they were talking about is, I know on the West Coast here, the deserts are in danger from the government control and closure. But here was one of the conversations that I had with the representatives, and it's about safety in our national parks. It doesn't matter if you're on the East Coast, middle of the country, north, south, whatever. The way that you talk to rangers and Bureau of Land Management officials and interact with them matters. This is directly affecting us and the laws that they're trying to pass to close the parks. I don't know if you ran into any of this, Joe, but there is a group of people or certain individuals that are creating their own difficulties with these individuals that then they go to their superiors with, and their superiors may or may not be on our side, but the people above them that are in the local governments are definitely not on our side. They don't want off-road vehicles in these parks, or they want you in a Jeep or in a controlled machine that goes 3 miles an hour so that you can bird watch or whatever it is. Nothing against bird watchers, but we need to look at our safety issues, how we're addressing everything, and we need to teach our riders and teach our people in our industry to respect these officials more.
I don't live out west in communist California, so in most of the riding that we do here and testing, I haven't been out to Wayne National Forest yet to see how that is. That's in Southeast Ohio. We're in Southwest Ohio. But I'm very involved with, the mountain biking in our area. And it's similar, it's different, but it's actually very much the same because, all of us as mountain bikers or off-roaders, ATV and side-by-side people, I do go out west and, test side-by-sides with, Alan Knowles, who does a lot of side-by-side building and testing for us on the West Coast. And, a lot of it just comes down to common sense and respect. And it's something that's missing a lot in society today. And all right, I'm going to throw a little dirt since we're an ATV show. I'm going to take advantage and throw a little dirt at the side-by-side crowd. You have so many people that are in side-by-sides these days. They did not come up on dirt bikes. They did not come up on ATVs. They do not have the fear of crashing and breaking their neck, and they don't have the fear of what if I get hit by a 1,000-pound car coming over the ridge of a hill, so if I'm in that 1,000-pound car, I should slow down. You have a lot of people. You got a lot of white collar, upper income, blue collar people that have never off-roaded, and they're going out and buying $30,000-$40,000 side-by-sides that'll go 80 miles an hour, have 2 feet of suspension travel, and it's just like not a care in the world. And then they're driving around off-road, their radio's blaring at 150 decibels. It's louder than the machine, and everybody else who's just out there on their little nature hike, maybe riding their mountain bike, maybe walking with their family, maybe they are in a Jeep and they're just kind of cruising along at a pace. Now you've got this guy flying past in a side-by-side going 60 miles an hour with the radio cranked to 10, just ruining your nature experience. Not everybody wants to deal with your crap. As a mountain biker, we share public parks in our area, which is very much public space. It's the same kind of situation. And there are those of us who take the mountain biking very seriously, and we like to haul. We like to go fast. But when we come up on a hiker, we're always looking for hikers. We're always looking for other people. And when we come up on a family of people, we cut our speed down to a crawling pace, and we cruise past these people slow. We're like, hey, how are you? Nice day, beautiful day, take care. We take time to say hello and be friendly and show other people using the trail that we want you to have a good time. We're having a good time. We're all sharing this together. So, as off-roaders, as a young guy, we were all about loud pipes. We want loud pipes on our bikes. And then we couldn't figure out why the guy next door called the cops and took advantage of a noise ordinance to get us to stop riding in my childhood friend's backyard because of our loud thumping 4-strokes. we were kids. We didn't realize we were being rude, but this guy took a lot of dirt bike noise for quite a few days for probably 10 hours a day before he put his foot down. So yeah, we pay taxes, and those of us involved in off-roading typically have better than average income. So we're not typically poor. We shouldn't be stupid. This is our fight to lose, and a little respect goes a long way. Slow down when you see a BLM person. Slow down if you're coming up on a guy in a Jeep. Don't be rude to other off-roaders. Just be considerate. Turn the radio down when you're around other people that don't want to hear it. It's just common sense. But again,
well, another portion of your common sense is know the rules to the park that you're going to go ride in. It doesn't matter if you've been going there 20 years. I guarantee there are things that you've never even considered that are a rule. Now, if a ranger approaches you, or if another official of some sort approaches you, they do not want to write you a ticket because it causes them extra work that they don't want to do. They want to be able to nod, say hi. Hey, did you by the chance know that you weren't supposed to be able to do this and you're doing it? And you go, I've been coming here for 20 years and I can do whatever I want and I pay my tax. They don't want to hear that. They want, oh, really? And they want you to get educated so that you can keep the park open for your children's children.
It kind of goes back to that. It's attitude. You don't get anywhere by being a jerk. And if everybody who's a jerk to the BLM people are off-roaders, then yeah, they're going to take it up to the superiors. They're going to get sick of dealing with it. Whereas if every time a BLM person, or land management person, whatever they call them in your area, park ranger, if they come up and they're like, hey, did you know you're not supposed to be doing that? I mean, humble yourself. No, sir, I didn't know that. Oh my gosh, I'm very sorry. Thank you for educating me. I won't do that again. The other day we had a test unit and we took a test unit. Oh, I'm hoping I'll get myself in trouble, to a public park on the river on a day where there were no people there. We were not riding it. We took it off the trailer. We 2 miles an hour, 1 mile an hour, creeped it over to the field next to the river where we wanted to take some pan shots. And an hour into sitting there panning the bike, a park ranger showed up and was like, hey, do you have a permit to shoot professional video? It was pretty obvious we weren't shooting with a phone or a GoPro, that we were professional shooters. And I just told him, no, sir, I don't. We didn't know that you had to have a professional video permit here in Ohio. I know that's a California thing, but I didn't know it was an Ohio thing. He says, yeah, it is. And I'm like, well, I'm really sorry. And he's like, you can't drive that here. And I'm like, well, we're not driving it. We just brought it over here to shoot video of it. And he's like, well, how did you get it here? It's like, what am I going to do? Lie to the guy, be a jerk? It's like, yes, sir. Yeah, we just drove it 30 feet there from the trailer to here and parked it. But I guess you're right. And did I get a ticket? No. Was he a jerk to me? No, because we were respectful. And respect is what's going to either keep this sport or it's going to wreck it.
We as a group need to police everyone. And as much as we want to scream, we have rights and all this, we also have an obligation to maintain things and follow the rules when there are rules. And if you want to change those rules, you need to get involved with your local governments and do that. If you can't do it at the local level, then you have to get involved with your federal. So get involved. People, get involved. Your local parks are always looking for people and input and help. So if you get involved and you're an off-roader and you're respectful and you're educating them on what we do, it's always going to help. I'm getting the chain rattled at me that we're over time. So we're going to have to.
If I can add just one point to that, this starts in two different directions, what we're talking about. It starts with responsibility at the bottom, which is us as off-road enthusiasts, being mindful, respectful, knowing the rules, being courteous to other land users, to authority figures. But at the same time, manufacturers, it also starts at the top of them, because the manufacturers do a lot of things and say a lot of things in regards to safety, and I can't fully blame them. But there's a lot of people online in the YouTube social media space that make a lot of video content showing people doing things they absolutely should not be doing in off-road vehicles, that simply doing it just helps prove the case against us. So I think those of us who are traditional media, we don't consider ourselves bloggers at ATV On Demand. We're a publication. Dirt Wheels is a publication. Dirt Tracks is a publication. We're not bloggers. We're not influencers. And us in the media and the manufacturers themselves need to be careful. About what we do, and because we're setting an example for the other people that go out and buy these units. And I feel like the traditional publications are doing a great job of this, but OEMs are starting to dabble in the blogger sphere with people who don't understand responsibility, legality, that didn't see our sport almost get wiped out in the 80s with the three-wheeler market. So there's a lot of responsibility top to bottom in the industry.
Don't get me started on that, because I know inside information about that is super, super negative. And at some point I'm going to address that and attack it, but not today.
Oh, bring me back for that one.
Oh, buddy, dude, there is some ugliness behind the scenes on that most people never dug deep enough to figure it out. And we found out some information that it's just the dastardly government thing. But there again, we don't want to get into there. We're trying to get along and save the industry. So everybody, I want to thank you so much, Joe, for coming and visiting with us. Jacob never got in today. I don't know what happened. I'll have to reach out to him and find out. And we'll be back. We'll be back next Sunday. We'll be back next Sunday at 8 a.m. So check us out. Joe, as always, brother, you're always welcome on any show that I ever do. And I really appreciate your insights and your time. Keep up the good work at ATV On Demand and UTV On Demand. Oh, by the way, at the show, I was talking to people in the UTV industry that needed some insights on some stuff. And I told them to reach out to you because you have UTV On Demand and you could help them.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate that. No, I have fun with all of it. ATVs are a little bit. I'm an ATV guy, but I love the side by sides, and that's where a lot of the industry is going. And yeah, thanks for spreading the word. I appreciate that.
Anytime, brother. Have an amazing day, and we'll catch up to you soon.
You too, sir. Take care.
All right, buddy. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.